Let's talk about the big picture here. Two major lawsuits. Bitcoin's price rather resilient. I know that's something that you mentioned on Twitter today. What's the big takeaway for someone, whether they're invested in the space or not?
Well, I think the first thing is that, you had two major cryptocurrency exchanges basically get sued back-to-back days. And I think the initial news can be shocking and lead to uncertainty, a lot of fear in the market, and more volatility. But the market absorbs that. And the fact of the matter is these lawsuits are going to be going on for a long time. And it was really impressive to see Bitcoin's price just bounce kind of off 25, and now it's rallying as I speak. But I think a lot of people kind of saw these things coming. It's like I said, Binance has been raising eyebrows since 2017. I mean, all of these things we've been kind of talking about for a long time, and it's like the SEC finally figured it out or finally caught up. And same thing with Coinbase. They got served a Wells notice, like you said. And so I think the market kind of expected this. The fact that they both came within days of each other was maybe a little shocking for the market. But the fact that Bitcoin is holding up, I think, speaks to its resilience right now. And maybe there's some seller exhaustion out there just after this long, drawn out bear market. So to me, it's kind of a bullish signal, to be honest with you. And then Bitcoin itself, I mean, Bitcoin, you're never going to see Bitcoin in one of these complaints because Bitcoin's different than these other cryptocurrencies. I mean,
That's right.
it's leaderless, it's decentralized, it doesn't have a founding team, it doesn't have these regulatory risks. So perhaps we're seeing some capital flow out of these cryptocurrencies that do have regulatory risk and into the king, into Bitcoin, which also would be a bullish dynamic occurring right now. So to me, the price is kind of holding up, and this is kind of back to back. You could say they're black swans, but they're not black swans because people saw them coming. But it's holding up, so I think it's pretty bullish.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think everything is good for Bitcoin, and in the long run, this will all benefit Bitcoin and making sure that people can differentiate between Bitcoin and crypto. I was actually hoping for the price to go a little lower. I was hoping for maybe a low 20 so I can purchase a little bit more. But okay, while I still have you, before we go, I want to touch a little bit more on macro because I know you've been following the market conditions really closely. It's a lot of craziness. I mean, Bitcoin has been sort of a stable coin in the high 20s. Meanwhile, we see some of the tech stocks just ripping new all-time high for Apple. And I'm just a little confused, I guess. I mean, I feel like, we're decelerating, continuing to decelerate in terms of the greater economy. We haven't, hit that hard landing. We're not in an official recession yet. I mean, what are you seeing from your vantage point?
Yeah, it seems like markets in terms of equities and other risk assets have been pretty optimistic, obviously, to start 2023. I think that's on the back of a lot of things. I think you've had earnings come out and actually be more optimistic. I think over almost 80% of S&P 500 reporting companies beat earning estimates in Q1. And a lot of people back then, they were expecting the recession to start in first couple months of 2023. That was a common consensus. And now you're kind of seeing a lot of different things happen. You had liquidity dynamics kind of help buoy risk assets to start the year as well. Obviously, you had the debt ceiling dilemma that got resolved. So I think that could seem as a bullish event. Now, there might be some liquidity dynamics after that that could kind of suck liquidity out of the system. But there's also other avenues where that might not happen. And so I think that was overall kind of an optimistic conclusion to that debacle. Obviously, we didn't default. And then a lot of people expect the Fed, like maybe they'll hike a little bit more. Or a lot of people are pricing in a pause at next June FOMC meeting. But they're certainly close, right? I mean, probably 90% of the Fed's rate hikes are behind us. Now, there is a lag to those, but right now the market doesn't really care about that. And if they hear something like the Fed's going to pause at June, I think that could be another, tailwind for risk assets and equities. And then people are just really bearish. There's just calls of a recession everywhere. And I think a lot of people are paralyzed from the last year. I mean, it was a lot of wealth destruction occurred where bonds got destroyed, equities fell, obviously Bitcoin fell. And, that can kind of happen in a bear market where it's coming out and nobody believes it, right? That's the beginning of the bullish trend is it climbs a wall of worry. And maybe we're seeing that now. For me, I do think that we're potentially up against some recessionary, the kind of recessionary factors coming in later this year. It's hard for me to think that the Fed can hike rates 500 bips at the fastest pace in history after almost a decade of low interest rate policy, and we're not going to feel any effects of that. Obviously, we had the banking crisis, we had some failures, but then the Federal Reserve, FDIC, and Treasury kind of patched it all up.
Yep.
But if we see more of those, it could become really problematic. So I'm kind of like cautiously optimistic right now, but I'm being realistic as well, because I think you have to keep a close eye on the unemployment situation, look at the labor market. If you start to see kind of climbs in that, I think that could kind of really start to be the signal that things are going to start to deteriorate. But right now we're in this like kind of like la la land of everything's kind of going up and nobody can believe it. Nobody thinks it can go on forever. But again, it's kind of this people are deciding, is this the beginning of a bull market and this is how they all start, or are we kind of headed towards something later this year? And so those are the kind of differing viewpoints going on in the macro picture today.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, it seems like we've been able to kick the can down the road just because there was so much liquidity injected during the height of the stimulus. And so it takes a while for that to come out of the system and for the lagging effects of these rate hikes to really come into play. So what do you think it's going to take for Bitcoin to experience like a true bull run and a really new adoption cycle? I know before in the past, you've said that there are some untapped, potential investors out there, millennial women. I'm certainly trying to reach them, but there are a lot of people who are not in this space yet. And what is it going to take for that next real run where we could potentially even flirt with the all-time high that we previously had?
I think there's a lot of things that could benefit Bitcoin to kind of get us up into, like, let's say the six figure, like 100K that everyone dreams of. I think one is that if we actually see a return to more accommodative fiscal and monetary policies, obviously that's a big part of Bitcoin's value proposition, is that they're going to have to keep printing, right? I mean, and when you look at the situation, the fiscal situation, it's hard to look at that and not say the Fed's going to have to step in here at some point. And so when that happens, I think Bitcoin is going to be, the fastest horse in the race again. It's a liquidity sponge. So if liquidity gets turned on and gets blasted on, I think Bitcoin's going to benefit heavily from that. I also think it's up to us as an industry to build better products and services to make it easier for people to understand Bitcoin as well as use it. That is going to go a long way towards pumping the price. And so those two things, I mean, it's on us, and then it's on the Federal Reserve and the government to do what they're going to do, and for us to just be there, but build the best life raft that we can possibly build, so people know how to get into it, and then it stays afloat as everybody rushes into it, that we're ready for that adoption when it happens and that increased demand. So that's kind of what we focus on. It was what I focus on in the industry, is just building and just understanding the dynamics and the macro picture of why Bitcoin has a long-term value proposition.